Hi everyone. Today I want to talk about something very specific that avoidant individuals sometimes say when they genuinely care about you. These statements may not sound like obvious declarations of commitment, but they can reveal something important. You may be the person they have chosen, the person they feel safest with, and the person they genuinely want to keep in their life. And this matters because one of the most confusing parts of being involved with someone who has avoidant attachment is the uncertainty around commitment. They often don't communicate commitment in the direct, reassuring way that an anxious or preoccupied partner might want. You may want to hear something like, "I want us to get married within the next year," or "This is where I see our relationship going, and let's work toward it together." For someone who needs reassurance, that kind of statement can feel incredibly comforting. But avoidant individuals often don't operate that way. Their thoughts about commitment can be much less direct. Instead of constantly thinking about the future in terms of labels, timelines, or promises, they may focus more on what they are experiencing in the relationship right now. They might think, "This person has been incredibly understanding with me. What can I do to give something back?" Or, "They've seen parts of me that I consider difficult, and they still stayed. I don't want to lose someone like this." They may recognize that being around you feels peaceful, supportive, and genuinely good. They can become deeply attached to the experience of having you in their life, even if they struggle to put that attachment into words. And sometimes, as they become healthier and more emotionally secure, that attachment eventually translates into a deeper commitment. You may eventually bring up marriage, a future together, or taking the relationship to another level. And they may respond positively because internally, they have already decided that you are someone they want in their life. Of course, this doesn't mean every avoidant person will eventually marry their partner, or that every relationship with an avoidant individual will have the same outcome. There is no universal formula, but when an avoidant person is healing, becoming more emotionally available, genuinely invested in you, and learning to tolerate closeness, their behavior can tell you much more than their words. That's what I want to focus on today. There are certain things they may say that don't sound like traditional statements of commitment at all, yet they can reveal how deeply they value you. These examples aren't about men or women specifically. They're about avoidant attachment patterns, particularly the dismissive avoidance style, and people who lean strongly in that direction. Obviously, attachment isn't one size fits all, and every individual has their own personality, history, and way of expressing emotions. But these patterns are common enough that they're worth understanding. One statement that stands out is something like, "What can I do so you don't see me that way?" You might hear this after you've expressed doubt about them, questioned their intentions, or become anxious because of something that happened between you. Instead of simply dismissing your feelings, they may ask, "What can I do to change your mind?" Or, "What can I do to make you trust me again?" They may not literally say, "I would never hurt you, and I want you to know that you can trust me." Instead, their words might come out in a much more practical way. "What can I do so you don't think that about me?" That sentence can be surprisingly meaningful when it comes from someone with strong avoidant tendencies. You might wonder, how does that prove anything? Couldn't anyone say that? And yes, technically anyone could. But the context matters. An avoidant person who has learned to protect themselves through emotional independence may not naturally place much importance on how another person perceives them. This isn't necessarily because they don't have empathy, and it doesn't automatically mean they have narcissistic personality disorder or any other personality disorder. Avoidant attachment by itself is not a personality disorder. For many people with avoidant tendencies, the pattern developed much earlier in life. They may have learned that depending on others was unsafe, unnecessary, or even discouraged. They may have been taught, directly or indirectly, that they needed to handle things themselves, stay strong, avoid vulnerability, and become highly self-sufficient.
Over time, independence can become more than a useful quality. It can become part of their emotional survival strategy. They learn to rely on themselves rather than reaching outward. They learn to minimize their needs. They may become uncomfortable when someone needs too much from them, and they may also become uncomfortable admitting how much they need another person. And that's where something interesting happens. If you genuinely matter to an avoidant person, your opinion of them can begin to matter in a way that it normally doesn't. They may suddenly become concerned that you misunderstand them. They may want to repair your perception of them. They may want to prove that they are trustworthy. Think about what that means emotionally. Someone who has spent much of their life saying, consciously or unconsciously, "I don't need anyone's approval," is now asking you what they can do to regain your trust. They're not simply walking away because you have doubts about them. They're engaging with the problem because losing your positive view of them matters. That doesn't necessarily mean they're ready to make a grand declaration about your future together. It doesn't mean you should immediately assume marriage is coming. But it can reveal that the relationship has become personally significant to them. They're not just protecting themselves from discomfort anymore. They're beginning to care about the emotional impact they have on you. And that distinction is important. An avoidant person may still struggle with vulnerability. They may still need space. They may still become overwhelmed by intense emotional conversations. They may still have moments where they pull back because closeness activates old fears. But when they return, attempt to repair things, ask how they can rebuild trust, or show concern about how you experience them, those behaviors can indicate emotional investment. For someone who has built their identity around independence, caring deeply about one particular person's perception can actually be a major shift. It can mean that you have become someone whose feelings they cannot simply ignore. And sometimes, that is how commitment begins with an avoidant person, not through a perfectly worded promise about the future, but through small changes in how seriously they take the relationship, how much they care about hurting you, and how willing they become to repair what has been damaged. So when you hear a statement like, "What can I do so you don't think that way about me?" don't automatically dismiss it because it doesn't sound romantic. Look at the behavior behind the words. Ask yourself whether they are trying to understand you, whether they're willing to make changes, whether they care about rebuilding trust, and whether their actions consistently show that they want to remain connected to you. Those details often tell you far more than a single sentence ever could. And this is exactly the kind of pattern I want to explore more here at Inside Avoidant. Because understanding avoidant behavior isn't about blindly interpreting every action as proof of love. It's about recognizing the difference between emotional distancing and genuine investment, between temporary discomfort and a person who is actually learning how to stay connected. When an avoidant individual begins making room for your feelings, your perspective, and your emotional needs, something important may be changing inside the relationship. They may still struggle to say, "You're the person I want forever." But sometimes, the way they fight to keep your trust is their way of showing that you have become someone they don't want to lose. When an avoidant person tells you, "What can I do so you don't see me that way?" it may sound like a simple question, but emotionally, it can mean much more than you realize. What they're really communicating is that your opinion of them matters. They don't want you to believe they're a bad partner, an untrustworthy person, or someone who would intentionally hurt you. They want to change the way you're seeing them. And for someone with strong avoidant tendencies, that can be significant because caring deeply about another person's perception can feel unfamiliar. A person who has spent years learning to be independent may have been conditioned to believe that needing others is unnecessary. They may have grown up hearing messages like, "Handle it yourself, don't ask for help, be strong, or you shouldn't depend on anyone." Over time, that mindset can become deeply rooted. They learn to solve everything alone. They learn not to rely on people. They may even interpret accepting someone else's perspective as a sign that they're losing their independence.
This can also contribute to stubbornness and limited self-reflection. Part of self-awareness involves being able to listen when another person tells you how they experience you. But if someone has spent their entire life believing they should only depend on themselves, hearing another person's opinion can feel uncomfortable or even threatening. That's why a statement like, "What can I do so you don't think that about me?" can represent the opposite of their usual pattern. They're essentially saying, "Your perception of me matters enough that I want to do something about it."
They want to prove something to you. They want you to know that they are trustworthy. They want you to understand that the person you're worried they might be isn't who they actually are. And yes, that can be a very meaningful moment with an avoidant individual. Imagine, for example, that you're in a relationship and you become uncomfortable because you notice they're spending a lot of time on their phone. Maybe they're texting frequently, and because you've already been experiencing some emotional distance from them, your mind starts wondering whether there's someone else. Now, let's assume they're genuinely not doing anything wrong. You tell them that you're uncomfortable.
Instead of immediately dismissing your concern, they listen. They reassure you. They appreciate that you are honest about how you're feeling. They explain that they're not talking to anyone romantically, and that they aren't interested in doing so. They might say something very direct like, "I'm not talking to anyone else. I only want you. If I wanted somebody else, I wouldn't be here." It may not sound like the softest or most romantic reassurance in the world, especially if they have a blunt communication style, but the meaning behind it can still be important. Then something even more revealing may happen. You might still feel uncertain. Maybe you tell them, "I don't know. Sometimes you seem distant, and when you're on your phone while we're talking, I start wondering what's going on."
And they respond, "What can I do so you don't feel this way about me?" Now pay attention to what they're actually doing. Some avoidant people may go surprisingly far when they feel that their partner genuinely believes they could be unfaithful. They might say, "Look through my phone. I have nothing to hide." Others might offer to delete a social media app or make some other change simply to remove the source of your anxiety. At first, you might think, why are they going to such an extreme? Doesn't that make them look suspicious? Not necessarily. Sometimes they're doing this precisely because they aren't hiding anything. The painful part for them is knowing that you genuinely believe they could betray your trust. They may not have much emotional experience dealing with that particular kind of vulnerability. They may be accustomed to handling problems through distance, logic, independence, or shutting down. So when they suddenly realize that someone they love sees them as potentially untrustworthy, their reaction can be surprisingly intense. It can almost look exaggerated. They might say, "No, I would never do that. Look at everything if you want. I'll delete the account. I don't care about any of that. I just don't want you thinking I'm that kind of person." That reaction doesn't automatically prove innocence, of course. You should always judge a relationship by consistent behavior, rather than assuming every reassuring statement is evidence of commitment. But when their actions consistently match their words, this kind of effort can reveal how deeply your perception matters to them. They're trying to communicate, "That's not who I am, and I need you to know that." For an avoidant person, that can be especially meaningful because they don't always invest that kind of emotional energy into everyone around them. They may be perfectly comfortable allowing other people to misunderstand them. They may not feel the need to explain themselves to everyone. They may not care whether acquaintances approve of them. But when it comes to someone they genuinely value, the situation can change. Suddenly, they care. Suddenly, your trust matters. Suddenly, they want to prove themselves. And that's why it's important to pay attention when an avoidant person repeatedly makes an effort to repair your perception of them. Don't focus only on the fact that they aren't making huge declarations about the future. Sometimes their investment appears in much smaller moments, reassuring you, answering difficult questions, explaining themselves, trying to rebuild trust,
and making changes because they don't want you to feel unsafe with them. Another statement that can carry a similar meaning is, "What can I do to make you understand? I hear you." This is something that can come up frequently between an avoidant partner and an anxious partner. The anxious partner may reach a point where they say, "You're not listening to me," or "You don't understand what I'm trying to tell you." And sometimes the avoidant person responds with frustration. They might say, "What do you want me to say?" Or, "What can I do to make you understand that I hear you?"
The delivery may not always be gentle. They might sound irritated, defensive, or overwhelmed. But don't automatically assume that frustration means they don't care. Sometimes they genuinely care, but don't know how to respond in the way their partner needs. They may understand that you're hurting without having the emotional vocabulary or communication skills to express the reassurance you're looking for. That's where being specific can help. Instead of expecting them to magically know what you need, tell them. You might say, "When I tell you something like this, I need you to acknowledge what I'm feeling before explaining your side." Or, "I want you to tell me directly that you understand why this hurt me." Or even, "When I bring up something emotional, I need you to respond with more than one sentence. I need you to explain what you're thinking." Give them something concrete to work with.
A person with avoidant tendencies may struggle with emotional communication, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're unwilling to learn. In fact, if they care about the relationship, they may be surprisingly willing to adjust once they understand exactly what you're asking for. That's an important distinction. You shouldn't have to beg someone to respect your emotional needs. But when a partner is genuinely trying and simply doesn't know what effective emotional communication looks like, specific guidance can sometimes make a huge difference. And if they actually listen, remember what you told them, and gradually start responding differently, that's meaningful. It shows that they're not simply hearing your words. They're allowing your needs to influence their behavior.
For someone who is naturally protective of their independence, that's a significant form of vulnerability. Avoidant individuals don't necessarily make these kinds of efforts with everyone. So, if you're seeing repeated attempts to understand you, reassure you, repair conflict, or adjust their behavior specifically within your relationship, don't overlook that effort. At the same time, don't romanticize every avoidant behavior or assume that difficulty communicating automatically means deep love. The healthiest way to interpret these signs is to look for consistency. Do their actions match their words? Do they make an effort over time? Are they willing to repair problems rather than repeatedly abandoning the relationship whenever emotions become uncomfortable? Those patterns tell you much more than one emotional conversation. And I know avoidant relationships can be incredibly confusing. Sometimes you can feel like you're constantly trying to translate what they're saying and what they're doing. That's exactly why understanding these smaller signals matters. You don't have to pretend that difficult behavior is acceptable. You don't have to ignore your own needs. But you can learn to recognize when an avoidant person is actually attempting to move toward you rather than away from you. And then there is another statement that can reveal something important. An avoidant person may tell you directly, "I don't like when you do that. It really frustrates me." They may point out a specific behavior of yours that bothers them. And surprisingly, that can also be a sign that they are emotionally invested, because instead of silently withdrawing, they're actually telling you what's happening inside them. Why can a statement like, "I don't like when you do that, it frustrates me," actually indicate that you matter deeply to an avoidant person? Because when an avoidant individual doesn't feel comfortable expressing their needs, their usual response is often to create distance. They may pull away, become emotionally unavailable, cut someone off, or simply decide that the issue isn't worth discussing because they aren't invested enough to deal with it. So when they do the opposite and actually tell you, "I don't like when you do that," something important is happening. They're giving you access to their needs. They're essentially saying, "I trust you enough to tell you what bothers me."
and I believe you might actually care enough to do something about it. That's a major step for someone who has learned to rely almost entirely on themselves. They're not just complaining, they're taking an emotional risk. They're trusting that you won't use their vulnerability against them. They're trusting that you won't dismiss what they're saying. And, most importantly, they're trusting that their needs can actually be heard and respected within the relationship. That is a skill many avoidant individuals have to develop as they become more emotionally secure. Learning how to identify their needs, communicate them clearly, and remain present while waiting for another person to respond is an important part of healing. So if they're already doing that with you, it can tell you something about the level of trust they've developed in your relationship. And honestly, if you've reached the point where an avoidant partner feels comfortable enough to communicate their needs directly, you probably didn't get there by accident.
I'm not saying you had to prove your worth or spend years trying to earn someone's love. You shouldn't have to constantly prove yourself to anyone. But if they trust you enough to express their frustrations openly, chances are you've consistently shown them that you're someone who can be trusted. Maybe you've taken responsibility when you were wrong. Maybe you've listened instead of immediately becoming defensive. Maybe you've respected their boundaries while still communicating your own. Maybe you've demonstrated over and over again that conflict doesn't automatically mean abandonment. Those experiences can make it easier for an avoidant person to finally believe, I can tell this person what I need, and they won't disappear or attack me for it. So give yourself some credit too. If your partner has reached this stage after a long period of emotional distance, uncertainty, or difficulty communicating, you may have been through quite a lot to get here. That doesn't mean you should accept unhealthy behavior simply because they're finally opening up. But it does mean you can recognize the progress for what it is. Sometimes the relationship you've been hoping to experience begins to appear through these very ordinary conversations. Another statement that I hear quite often is, I'm not angry, don't worry about it. You may hear something like, I'm not mad at you, just try to work on it next time. Or, it's okay, don't worry about it, we're fine. This can be especially meaningful when you're dealing with someone who has a tendency to withdraw during conflict. Imagine you've made a mistake, and you're immediately worried that they're upset with you. Maybe you're expecting them to become distant or shut you out. You start overthinking everything because you're afraid you've damaged the relationship. Then they tell you, I'm not mad, seriously, don't worry about it, we're okay. Just try to do things differently next time. Pay attention to what they're actually communicating. They're telling you that the problem hasn't changed the way they feel about you. They're saying, yes, this bothered me, but it doesn't mean our relationship is falling apart. That's an important distinction. An avoidant person who is becoming more emotionally secure may begin learning how to separate a disagreement from the entire relationship. Instead of interpreting one problem as a reason to disappear, they can recognize that two people can experience conflict and still remain connected. They may even tell you, we're good, let's just move forward. And if they say it sincerely, sometimes you should believe them. You don't necessarily have to keep reopening the issue because you're waiting for some hidden meaning behind their reassurance. If they've communicated that they're okay, they've accepted what happened, and they're willing to move forward, allow their words to have some weight. Some avoidant individuals use phrases like, don't worry, we're fine, or we're on the same page, let's just move on. That may sound incredibly simple, but for someone who historically handled emotional discomfort through withdrawal, being able to remain connected while saying, we're okay, can represent real emotional growth. They're not pretending nothing happened. They're not necessarily saying that every behavior is acceptable. They're communicating that one difficult moment doesn't have to destroy the relationship. And sometimes that is exactly what a partner needs to hear. You might still feel anxious because you're used to reading between the lines. You might wonder whether they secretly want to leave, whether they're still upset, or whether their reassurance is genuine. But if their words are supported by their behavior, give them the opportunity to mean what they're saying. If they tell you, I'm not angry, and they continue interacting with you normally. Stay emotionally present and don't punish you with silence. That consistency matters. If they say, "We're good," and they actually continue investing in the relationship, that's meaningful too. The goal isn't to convince yourself that every avoidant person's reassurance is automatically true. The goal is to look at the entire pattern. Are they communicating more openly? Are they allowing you to know when something bothers them? Are they expressing their needs instead of disappearing? Are they able to experience conflict without immediately ending the connection? Are they reassuring you when you're afraid they've pulled away? If the answer is consistently yes, then you're seeing something very different from the classic avoidant pattern of shutting down and creating distance.
And I know relationships involving avoidant attachment can sometimes feel incredibly complicated. There can be moments when you're unsure what they mean, why they're pulling back, or whether they genuinely care. But it's also important to recognize progress when it appears. If someone who once struggled to communicate is now telling you what they need, reassuring you after conflict, explaining when they're frustrated, and reminding you that the relationship is still okay, those are not meaningless behaviors. They can be signs that this person feels safe enough to stay connected. And if you genuinely love them, that can be incredibly reassuring. You don't need to turn every small sentence into proof of a lifelong commitment. Instead, look at whether these moments are becoming part of a larger pattern of trust, communication, accountability, and emotional availability. That's where the real meaning is.
When an avoidant person begins allowing you into the parts of themselves they normally keep protected, they're giving you something they don't give easily: access. And sometimes love isn't first expressed through a dramatic promise about forever. Sometimes it sounds much simpler. I hear you. Tell me what you need. What can I do differently? I'm not mad. We're okay. Let's work on it and move forward. When those words are consistently backed by meaningful actions, they can reveal that the person who once struggled with closeness is gradually learning how to stay connected with you. And if that's happening in your relationship, it's worth recognizing the progress instead of overlooking it.